Welcome to the Touchlines and YouTube channel videocast thing. A visual medium. Actually, we joke about it being a visual medium on the podcast, which you should listen to and subscribe to. But this, not a podcast, videocast, vodcast. Video? I think it's just video. Anyways, I'm your host, Asa, aka the Twig. You will see the other guy who looks unathletic. That would be my co-host, Napoleon Greg, aka Stumpy. Yeah, whatever. You can't share your screen. You get pot shots. We are here with our coaches, Mike and Josh, and we are here to talk about American football for British people. So last week, you can see it on the where you're watching this. We got into like the basics, and we were really prepared, and we had a slideshow. And this week, we're going to do a little different, a little more fun, little more off the cuff, and we're gonna play a game. Instead of being like straightforward, we're just gonna play a game. This series is not actually brought to you by anybody. If you would like to sponsor us, we'll take it. If you would like to launder your money through us and make that money clean for tax purposes, we'll do that. We will take your money for tax purposes. Stump, you're a lawyer. Are there any issues with that?
Nope, perfectly legal.
Perfectly. Okay, I was going to make sure that if at least the lawyers involved here on screen are okay with that.
Yeah, no, I'm a lawyer, and I checked with my other lawyer, and we're in agreement that money laundering through this podcast exclusively legal. So
good. So long as we aren't betting on our own team to win as a player.
Yeah, that wrong. But if that app hypothetically were to sponsor, say, I don't know, a stadium in the NFL, that would be okay.
Right.
Betting on games,
correct.
Not okay. Having a casino sponsor the games, totally fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Gambling.
Checks out.
Black and white. I don't see what it's obvious. Yeah.
I have no problems there. Yeah.
Also, if you want to undermine the sanctity of the games by paying your coach to lose games, that's okay. But if you're
allegedly,
but if you're part of the team, not on the team, not traveling with the team, removed from the team for mental health reasons, which we will not joke about, and you bet on a game, not okay. Shout out Calvin Ridley. If you would like to be on the podcast, tell your side of the story instead of tweeting it out, we'll have you. If anybody knows Calvin Ridley, let them know. That will be here.
Also,
Anyways.
shout out Calvin Ridley because I don't think I've ever placed a $1,500 bet to lose $10 million. That's just impressive. That's just impressive return on investment.
Anyways, if you didn't watch the first episode, Coach Mike, he played tight end at Michigan. Coach Josh, he played defensive back at Baylor. Coach Stump played cheerleader at Michigan. And Coach Asa has a master's in coaching. That's a true statement. Master's in coaching.
All right.
Not football specifically, just like coaching in general, sports coaching. You can coach gymnastics. Anyways, so what we're going to talk about today is again, we're going over the basics. And this is sort of the basics that I'm going to tell you a little story about how I learned this stuff. And I want to go around the chat about how you learned these things in the first place, and then we'll get into specifics. I learned about formations from NCAA football. Like that's just straight up how I learned what formations were. And it's a funny thing because like people talk about video games. Oh, video games ruin the youth. Video games taught me football because there's no easier way to do it. So if you are a British person and you have like a PS4 or a 5 or an Xbox and you really want to learn like how to play football, go play Madden on easy because it's super helpful. Josh, I'm interested, like where did you first learn about like the concept of formations in football? Obviously you grew up in, you mentioned you grew up in Nigeria playing soccer. So like formations are a thing there too, but like, where did you first learn that like every play we're going to have a different setup?
In middle school, like when I actually started playing, again, like my intro to football was a little different because like I just got thrown into it. So I hadn't watched any of the games beforehand. I didn't know any of the rules. I didn't know anything. I just went in cold. So everything that I learned initially was from actually just like doing it and like being on a team and like being coached in middle school. I got a better understanding of it as I played and as I got interested in the game and started watching games and playing Madden and NCAA football. But it was all just like learning on the go for me.
Makes sense. Mike, you grew up playing football, but also in a different sort of context.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I started playing football like in middle school. So I think when you start to actually understand what's going on, it's probably around that time. I mean, I'm sure back in like the elementary school days playing Madden, it's like, okay, I'm going to line up with nothing but wide receivers and throw Hail Marys because it's, 4th and 27. Yeah. Like, that's just what I'm supposed to do.
I do want to point out here that Josh played under an Art Briles offense, which played with all wide receivers and went essentially Hail Mary on a lot of plays.
Yeah. I don't know how many times you guys were 4th and 27. Hopefully not a lot. So, it's one of those things where you just kind of understand, from a young age where it's like, oh, wide receivers are fast. If you need to throw the ball far, you need more of them in the game. If you need to get a short amount of yards, you need bigger, heavier people in there. Obviously there's people who like break that mold of big people run fast and small people run slowly.
Jordan Davis.
But what's that?
Jordan Davis.
Oh yeah.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Right.
Well, no. DK Metcalf makes sense because he's just like a big wide receiver. Jordan Davis is the scariest person that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's a whole nother, maybe that's an episode is to talk about the combine and the drills and what it means and what are good,
What if I told you that this week on the podcast, we will be talking about the NFL combine?
Oh, perfect.
Excellent.
Look at that.
I would like to be on that one. Yeah.
Cross promotion. You see how that works?
Yeah.
We're also doing it with a British guy.
We are. He asked us to because he it was the Jordan Davis 40 time and he was like, this is ridiculous. We have to talk about this. Like, all right.
And I really want to be on the pod just so I can shout out my Bears. If y'all didn't see, we were the only school to have 3 guys run a sub 4.4. We just breed athletes over there. So
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I don't.
You can't talk any crap about that. So
yeah. And like it's always a funny thing in whenever combine season comes around because every semi-athletic person in the world starts looking at it as like, I could probably run a sub 540. And it's like, no, you can't. You really can't. I do want to shout out Mike and I's former roommate who was convinced, and I'm not going to name names because he's a professional now, but convinced that it was just with a little training, he could run a 4.5.
And walk onto the team and be a defensive back. And one of the nights when we were walking home from the library, he wanted to race me. So were you there for that, or had you just heard this story?
I was at home when you guys got back.
Oh yeah, so you heard it. So we'll get to this, actually the content of this podcast in about 30 seconds. So we ended up walking off probably like a distance of like 25 yards or something. And the goal was to run there and back. And this guy probably weighed 80 pounds less than I did, convinced that, he played soccer in high school. He was going to be, he could walk on and play defensive back. Anyway, like I bust him so far, so dramatically on the first leg. Coming back, I ran it backwards and still beat him. He still doesn't live that one down. Anytime that he starts to mouth off a little bit, I'm like, Phil, do you need to have another race?
I was about to say you guys had enough vaguely arrogant roommates that I can't really narrow this down, but thank you, Mike, for doing that for us. It's not fair for me to turn. Come on, man. On straight line speed, he clearly would have had you.
That's it.
And Mike and I played a fun game, and we're going to get to the content in a second. But Mike and I had a fun game called at what distance could I overtake him? Because at that point, I was running like 6-minute miles. And we came to the conclusion that if I remember correctly, it was about 800.
Yeah,
Because
probably,
at that point you were
the
done.
400. I'd still probably take. I feel like I would start to peter out after that. So, big guy, not run long, I guess.
Big guy, no
tree
run
fall
long.
hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so while I very clearly am not setting up what's going on to come on my other screen, how about somebody explains personnel? I'm gonna give offensive personnel. Mike, why don't you just explain how like different people on the field do different things?
Yeah. So probably the easiest group to identify every single time is going to be the offensive line. In 99.9% of cases, there are 5 offensive linemen. You always end up having the center who goes over top of the ball. So wherever the ball is placed, where the last play ended, you have the center. Kind of in the middle on either side working out, you have the guards, left guard and right guard. And working out further, you have left tackle and right tackle. So the offensive line is, I guess, like the first part of like the personnel. They're always in there, so they're kind of just like a given when we're talking about personnel going forward. Beyond that, the most important player or easiest to identify would be the quarterback. We'll either talk about the quarterback being under center, meaning that they're kind of crouched underneath with their hands, right up underneath the center to get the ball. And this is a 12 personnel. So you have one tight end and two backs. No,
So Mike,
21. 21 personnel.
This is 21. So Mike,
21 personnel. Huh?
Mike just mentioned for our listeners the idea that there is personnel groupings. So each of these this formation is an offset I. We'll get to sort of what that means in a second. But the way that football teams call out plays or call out formations, you have personnel groupings. So you'll sometimes hear people say 11 personnel. That's the most common in both college and pro, I would say at this point. Is that about right? Yeah. So 11 personnel means one back right there and one tight end right there. So for those of you listening who watch NFL football, running back, that's going to be your Dalvin Cook, your Adrian Peterson. Derrick Henry is the answer there. Good call.
Yeah.
Wow, you went back to Adrian Peterson before the...
I blanked. Yeah.
Priest Holmes. Yeah.
I blanked. I'm sorry.
Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an answer. Emmitt Smith. Tight end. These are going to be your... So running backs are generally your fast, stocky types. But you'll also get occasionally, somewhat bigger, whatever. Tight ends and fullbacks, I'm sorry, Mike, they're the same thing. They are your blocky, catchy types, right? Like they need to catch the ball, but they also need to block.
They're more closely related than any other two groupings. Like I'd say that I was, personally closer to a fullback than I was a wide receiver. Some tight ends are different than that, but yeah, I won't.
Devin.
Yeah, delay that or argue that point. Yeah.
And then you have your wide receivers who are your fast folks. So if we were going to put this in sort of soccer parlance, because again, this is American football for British people, for European people. Your quarterback, that's going to be I'm going to say your like playmaking midfielder. Everybody cool with that?
Number 10.
Yeah, you're number 10. Your wide receiver, those are your wingers. Your running back, that's going to be your 9. That's going to be the guy. Although from an ideology perspective, I would say your 9 is your wide receivers because they are the most arrogant people on the field. We shouldn't curse on YouTube. Your running backs, they're your like box to box midfielders, right? Like they're going to do a lot of the work. It's going to take them a little bit longer to do what they're doing. Offensive linemen, I don't know. Romelu Lukaku, like they're big, they're there. They don't really do much if you don't know what you're watching.
No, I'm pretty sure Romelu Lukaku doesn't do much if you do know what you're watching as well.
Shout out to Chessie Hour. That was $100 million mistake, wasn't it? And you don't have an owner anymore.
You know what? I'm as a Chelsea fan, I'm usually critical of Lukaku, but I'm gonna stand in for my man here. I'm a defender. I'm not gonna let y'all just talk about him like that, especially from a Spurs fan. We're not gonna do that on this.
Harry Kane is the best center forward in the league. Talk to me. I actually don't even know if that's wrong. Like I said it like it was wrong. I don't even think that's wrong. Anyways, so let's talk about those are formations on or personnel on offense. You got your wide receivers, Your offensive linemen, again, there are differences between them. If you, dear listener, would like to know the difference between guards, centers, and tackles on a sort of micro level, let us know. Add us. We'll be posting this in the Discord. Josh will be posting this in the Discord shortly. Let us know. If you want to know like what it takes to be a guard versus a tackle, we can get into that a little bit. If not, they're all sort of grouped together. The fact is that there actually is a big difference between interior offensive linemen and exterior offensive linemen. But we don't have to get into that now. So let's get into what I believe to be the sort of the base offensive. That's old school. Sorry. That was going to be funny to me. What you'll most likely see. Sorry, where is this? This is what you are most likely going to see in the NFL when you watch. And this is known as ACE. That single back. Some people call it ace. Some people call it single back. And this is basically what you're going to see on, I don't know, half of the plays that you watch.
Yeah, 60, 70% of the plays.
And this is the most common under center formation that you're going to see. So basically, Mike, just really quickly, like what are the things that you are going to run out of this? So we're going to get to specific plays later in this series. But like why do teams run single back?
I guess it allows you to probably have it gives you a little bit more. I guess if the way that I think about it, having those fullbacks in the backfield, they're typically not the most explosive guys in the world. So in my opinion, like having something like this allows you to be able to stretch the field. You have to there's a lot of different plays that you can run to vertically put pressure on the team, like on the defense. But at the same time, you still have like a tight end in there to either help from a pass protection or run blocking standpoint. And, you can have your running back or halfback in this case still be a playmaker as well. So I guess I don't know. Is that what you're looking for?
Yep, precisely. Good job, everybody. Josh, when you were defending this, was this something that was difficult to deal with, or do we have to get into like sort of trip sets before we get into like difficulties?
I wouldn't necessarily say difficult. I would say so. Defensively, a lot of what we ran was based on like percentages of like how much the team we played against ran, like in what they ran in certain formations, and so in this formation it was pretty balanced as far as like run and pass. Because you have 3 wide receivers on the field and you also have a running back and a blocking tight end there. So defensively, as a corner, if I'm on the strong side of the field where the tight end is, I know that I pretty much have that wide receiver one-on-one because the safety is probably going to be locked on the tight end. And if I'm on the twin side, then me and the safety or the other defensive back who are covering those receivers are probably going to, what we call mix it, where we interchange between the receivers. So if the inside receiver comes outside, the corner has them, the outside receiver goes inside, the safety takes them, and we just kind of play off each other like that.
So something so this is something that you'll hear on broadcast, strong side, weak side, that actually is a helpful thing. So strong side, and this is, I'm just going to do this quickly. Strong side just means where the strength of the formation is. So that's usually just which side the tight end is. And the weak side, where there's no tight end. And that comes from the fact that in the early days of football, you were mostly running the ball. So you run to the strong side or the weak side. Another phrase that you'll hear is boundary and field. So boundary just means closer to the sideline. Field means farther from the sideline.
Yeah, and you have to kind of see like where you are with the hash lines and stuff, on a bigger field to get an idea of that. But yeah, you're right.
And here's a good idea.
Yeah.
So this formation is weird. We'll get there. I brought it up because I think it's funny because this is how football used to be played. And you can get anything. But
wing was it the wing T?
This is wing T. Yeah.
Okay.
So you see why quarterback, fullback, halfback would be there. Anyways, so the ball here, the center is right here. The ball is on the left hash, which means that this side, the left side, is the boundary, and the right side is the field. And here, because the end and the wing back are to the field, the right side is the strong side of the formation. Again, these are positions that don't exist anymore, but whatever. Although you'll see some wing backs in certain fun other formations. So,
hey man, they still exist in my heart. That's good enough.
That's good enough. So I want to show you something. We'll get there in a second. One moment. Okay. So these two formations, I don't have a straight eye, but these two formations, and if imagine the fullback is in the middle, that's I formation. So because we are from the upper Midwest and from the Big Ten, these were near and dear to our heart. Josh, I know you've never seen this. I know that the Big 12 doesn't do that, but this is another formation.
Josh,
Mike,
what's more foreign to you, the I formation or the wing T?
Probably the I formation because we played a team that ran a wing T for a couple of our non-league or non-conference games.
Non-conference.
So we're more familiar with wing T formations than the I formation.
Yeah, because
Everything
the triple
you need
option,
to know about
the
the Big
triple
12.
option comes out of the wing 12 or the wing T, right? So
Yeah.
like if you play like Georgia Tech or like Navy or something, like you're going to be closer to the wing T than you are to the I formation.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are other iterations of the I formation. This is the Maryland I or power I. Basically, whenever you have them lined up straight, it's an I formation. It's not that complicated. This is I'm going to show this
vaguely
one.
Straight.
Yeah, I'm going to show this one because I think that this is how many teams run it with a shift now. Like you very rarely get a fullback sitting, so they'll shift one way or the other. But the reason you do this is, at least from my perspective, is this is how you kill teams playing power, because the angles here are incredibly difficult for a defense to deal with. We're going to get to power and outside runs in a couple episodes. But this is, anytime you see a fullback in the backfield like this, you're usually looking at some manner of I formation. But you don't really see that in pro football anymore. This is the T formation. Doesn't exist anymore. Nobody runs this. But this was like the thing to do in 1912.
Did you dig up a wishbone formation for the listeners?
I don't think I do, but but wishbone is great. So this is your single back. This is your baseline. Occasionally you'll have a tight end, and usually this is not usually a straight wide receiver. It's very rare that you see in the NFL.
It's a fluid wide receiver.
Shut up, Stumpy. I hate you so much. This is usually what's known as a joker tight end. A joker tight end, Mike had mentioned a minute ago that usually tight ends are closer to fullbacks than they are to wide receivers. Now, Mike, occasionally you get people who think that they're tight ends and say that they're tight ends, but they're not tight ends. And again, I mentioned before that there's a guy who you played with named Devin Funchess.
Yeah.
Said he was a tight end, pretended he was a tight end.
He didn't want to be a tight end. He didn't want to be a tight end from the beginning. That's kind of how he was recruited and drafted, because he was, or not drafted, recruited and whatnot, because he was 6'5" and like 215, 220, and had like a prototypical body where if he grew and like he could go on to be a great tight end, but instead he went on to be a great wide receiver. So yeah, he was like a very big body wide receiver, like 6'5", 215, 220 is probably what he was when I played with him his freshman year, my fifth year. Yeah, so if you like lined him up as an inline tight end and had him block, things didn't go very well. So they didn't but that's what you do is he was a way better route runner and pass catcher than I was. I was a much better blocker, so that's why, you put people in positions where they can win. So
I think the best example of that too is still probably Jimmy Graham, because Jimmy Graham was functionally a wide receiver for those like Saints offensive powerhouse teams. but they kept designating him as a tight end because when they and we can get, well, I'm sure we'll get to this eventually, but when they kept franchise tagging him, they could underpay him because they designated him as a tight end instead of a wide receiver. So he's putting up wide receiver numbers for, significantly less than he should have been earning in pretty much everybody's opinion except the Bensons.
Dale Benson.
I think it's the Saints. Yeah.
But we love the Saints. We are pro Saints on this podcast, I think, unless Josh has some news about people leaving certain franchises that they were most recently playing for.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, we pro Saints.
We're pro Saints. Go Saints. Yeah. We love the Saints until we don't love the Saints anymore, and then we hate the Saints.
Yeah, any situation that causes Sean Payton to look around and be like, I got to get the fuck out of here, I'm definitely down for that.
Pro Saints, specifically pro Saints offensive line. If the Saints offensive line wants to come on the podcast, they're more than welcome. If anybody knows them, hypothetically, shout out the podcast. So let's talk for a second about the thing that you're actually going to see the most of. So we showed you it from under center because that's the way that I learned the game. That's the way that most of us learn the game. About 60% of the time in NFL and college football, you're going to see this. And this is known as the shotgun. And it's named after a gun because we're American. It's what we do. Nothing better to tell you. I don't know. Do you know why it's called shotgun?
I would accept that explanation.
I mean,
it's shotgun. It's shotgun because I actually know this because it's supposed to mimic the shotgun blast. So it's basically like air raid. You've got the multiple guys running around to the outside, and it's supposed to just be spraying the pellets out.
We have a functional society. Don't worry about it.
I think that you just looked on Wikipedia faster than I did.
So this is.
I did not. I did actually know that.
So this is shotgun. When teams say shotgun, it just means that the quarterback is set back next to or slightly in front of or behind, I guess, the running back. Sometimes you'll see
5 yards back.
Typically 5 yards back. Occasionally the running back will be offset. So they won't be exactly next to him. It'll be like a little bit back, like right here. That's for running plays that we will explain later. And specifically when we get to the zone read portion of this video cast, that is why. Because Rich Rodriguez, for all of his faults, is an offensive genius and understands angles about things better than you, unless you are a mathematician, much better than you do. So I think Stumpy is muted. He's muted himself somehow. And he's frozen.
No, if anybody's noticed, my video does not match up to my audio for some reason.
Yeah.
Because I noticed multiple times that my video inappropriately laughed at things that Mike was saying. So this is going to go. I'm definitely going to get canceled.
That'll happen.
Just know that I wasn't actually laughing at that. I'd actually laughed like 5 minutes earlier, and that's when it finally came through.
Excellent. Cancel Stumpy 2022. So this is what's known as a trip set. It's called trips because 3. Remember earlier Josh mentioned twins. It's because there was 2 twins, 3 trips, 4 quads. We'll talk about quads in a second because it's, to me, the funniest thing that you can do to a defense because all of their rules break down. And we'll explain that when we get to the defensive portion of this. I think that's in like episode 8. And like the way that these things work is that there are rules that defensive backs have to follow, and they all break down when you get to quads. And it's very, very funny.
I feel like we should not do anything on quads until we've gotten AJ Dillon to agree to appear on the podcast.
That's fair. AJ Dillon, we're not talking about quads until you come on.
That's good.
Again, this is another way that you can do it. We're going to do a pop quiz here. What personnel is this? Everybody together?
21.
21. Now, if he goes here, that's 12. That gives Mike more opportunities on the field. We like 12 personnel. 12 personnel is great. For a while, the Patriots really confused the NFL because they were running 12 personnel. And everybody was like forgot how to defend it. It's why the Wildcat works because the NFL, they're all really smart, but they're all really, really smart for the last, for about 3 years at a time.
Yeah, or yeah.
And and once you do something from like 4 years ago, like things they're like, what? No. We solved that problem. It's like, well, you didn't. Which is why occasionally, like Bill Belichick will just like go back to random things and they will work. Like he used the fullback to get to the Super Bowl because people were like, "How do we?" What Kyle from Juszczyk, whatever.
Juszczyk.
Yeah,
Juszczyk.
From San Francisco kills people because people aren't used to fullbacks anymore, and they're like, "How do I cover someone out of the backfield?" It's like
we shouldn't be talking about doing weird things with 12 personnel and killing people, because of the Patriots to use Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. Is that too soon? Is that too soon? Okay.
There is no statute of limitations on murder, as it turns out.
So,
wow, that's
easy.
Somehow the nerdiest thing said on this podcast. Video blog, whatever, blog.
So this is the next one. Again, we only name formations after firearms. This is a pistol formation, created, interestingly enough, for a specific quarterback. Does anybody know which quarterback?
Pete Maravich.
Wrong. Colin Kaepernick. Chris All created the pistol offense at Nevada because he had this really good quarterback who wanted to run, but he also was committed to running downhill. And so he's like, what if I just put the running back behind the quarterback in shotgun?
I did not know that.
Yep. Chris All did it because he had Colin Kaepernick and wanted to create it. And so basically the reason why you do this, I'm going to do this quickly because we spent the first 10 minutes of this episode dicking around. The reason you do this is very simple because when you run straight, you go faster. And so in shotgun, remember, you were next to the quarterback, so you had to run sideways before you could run straight. In pistol, straight.
Okay, the first 10 minutes of us dicking around on the on the video blog, we did mention that Mike only won because he made his route do movements instead of just straight run. If he was just running straight, he would have been faster.
And
See,
and
it all
that's
comes
the
around.
lesson. Yeah, good stuff. This is what Mike talked about when you talked about just put 5 wide receivers on the field.
Send them deep.
If you played NFL Blitz, da bomb, again, everything here has to be vaguely military related. Not sure why.
America. That's
we could talk about the Society of America elsewhere. But here, this is known as empty. When it's under center, I can only really remember one team who consistently ran empty under center. And that was the Reggie Bush era USC. And they did it because Reggie Bush came in motion every single time, and it was just jet sweeps and such. But so that is that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so that I can pull up our defensive stuff. So why don't you guys talk amongst yourselves for the next 30 seconds about your favorite football player? Stumpy, go.
Barry Sanders.
Show your work. I need more time than that.
Yeah, Barry Sanders.
I don't know. I mean, he's probably one of the 2 most exciting football players to ever watch. I guess the only downside is that he was more dependent on people creating things the Lions had a horrible offensive line when he was there, and he still managed to get tons of yards, but it wasn't like Mike Vick, where Mike Vick, who is probably the most exciting football player of all time, was just like, I got nothing. I'm gonna run whatever he did on the Minnesota Vikings, where he ran 75 yards to score a 20-yard touchdown. That was awesome.
Yeah. I guess growing up, I was a big Randy Moss fan back in the day.
Randy's dope.
And I'm, I don't know, taller than the average dude. So back in the day, playing playground football, I would always end up mossing kids, but I'm sure I had a 6-inch vertical when I was in 4th grade. So mossing is a relative term. So
I mean, it still counts if you just reach over them.
That's true.
It's their fault, and this is ironic coming from me. It's their fault if they're not tall enough to defend that.
That's true.
Hypothetically, Napoleon Gregg, how tall are you?
Allegedly 5'7".
Allegedly.
Is that with or without the hair wave that you got going on?
That's without. That's why I have the hair wave. So now I'm 5'9".
5'9". I like it. All right.
Josh, favorite football player?
Wow. When I actually started like playing and watching football and got into it because I played corner. My favorite football player at the time was Champ Bailey because at the time he was the best cover corner. But overall, like I liked watching, and y'all like this. I loved watching Megatron, Calvin Johnson, because for me, like I'd never seen like a human being that big move that fast and do what he did like on the football field.
Nobody.
He's the only wide receiver that I've ever seen where there were two defensive backs lined up for him like on a drive.
I remember that.
Right.
Like trying to press him off the line, like he was a
gunner.
A gunner and punt. I've never seen that before, and I don't think that's ever happened since then.
Is that the place? So like Matthew Stafford had a great a bunch of really great NFL films, like mic'd up segments while he was the Lions quarterback. Because there's the one where he separated his shoulder, and then he like ducked the entire coaching staff and went back in. There's the one where he faked the spike against the Cowboys and then rushed it. But like my favorite one was the one where he just goes into the huddle and he goes, "All right, Calvin, go long, break." And that is the entirety of the conversation.
I haven't seen that one.
It's a good one. My favorite was Deion Sanders because I'm a normal kid who likes like my favorite football player of all time is Deion Sanders, and my favorite basketball player of all time is Allen Iverson. I don't know if I can be more a product of a very specific type of 90s.
Yeah. Very swagger induced as well. Like like that matters for you.
Like my thing is that like I've always spiritually identified as a cornerback because I like the idea of talking shit even when you didn't do that much. Like I really appreciate that. I'm pro doing that.
It feels good. It makes you feel good. Yeah. I'll let you know personally. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's great. Like it doesn't count as an incompletion if you don't, after it's incomplete, signal it. Now it's an incomplete. Good. Did you do anything? Doesn't matter. Incomplete pass. On to second
mind
down.
games. It's mind games. You're trying to get in the receiver's mind.
You're playing Kirk Cousins. You overthrew the ball by 20 yards. You had nothing to do with it, but like it's still an incompletion.
To be fair, the one time that Josh lined up against the Michigan State quarterback, he lost. I'm going to bring that up every episode. We're going to do that.
Can we bring up the kicker?
Yeah. Wait, can we get the kicker?
Is he alive?
He is.
Yes,
he coached for Michigan State for at least a year. It was a very funny day on Twitter.
I remember that. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. To me, is the base defense. Like this to me is probably more base than anything else, and we'll talk about some variations. But Josh, did you guys run some version of a 4-3?
Yes.
First, what do you mean by 4-3?
Oh, right. Thank you. So four linemen. Linemen, again, Mike explained earlier that the offensive linemen are your big guys. They're the guys who you can most easily identify on any given play. The defensive players who line up right in front of them, those are your defensive linemen. So there are two. You'll hear three positions. Defensive tackle. Those are the guys on the inside. Defensive end, and then occasionally you'll hear something called a nose, and we'll talk about that when we get to 30, 3-3 or 3-4. And then so 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers. So linebackers are generally in the weight and size range of your tight ends and fullbacks. Generally want to be around depending on what league you're playing in, 220 to 240. If you're playing in the Big Ten, you can hang around 250. If you're this guy and it's your job to stay in the middle, that doesn't really work when that guy has to cover people downfield. But we'll talk about Tampa 2 down the road. Tampa 2's
unless you're in Kobe Dean.
Yeah. Okay. Occasionally you'll get Mike linebackers, middle linebackers, who are both 250 pounds and can run a 4.5. Nakobe Dean can do it. Tank Evans or whatever that defensive end from Georgia, who was like 265 and ran a 4.5. That was scary.
Nakobe Dean is a lot smaller than I thought he was. He's only listed at 225. I thought he was way bigger than that.
He plays big. Anyways, so your 4-3 means 4 down linemen. We will talk about the main difference between 4-3 and 3-4 in the defensive series. So if you want to know right now, it's just about 1 gap versus 2 gap. We'll explain that down the road. So these are your linebackers. We'll talk about their responsibilities again when we get to the defensive, and then cornerback, free safety, strong safety, cornerback. Josh, why don't you explain sort of the different roles that you have? I don't want to get into the specific roles of linebackers here because they shift so much depending on what they're seeing. Defensive tackles, basically stop the run. Defensive ends, stop the run, get the quarterback. Corners, safeties, why don't you explain that? And you don't feel the need to get into strong versus free safeties. We'll get there.
Okay. Your cornerbacks are basically your defense against wide receivers. Your cornerbacks cover the wide receivers. Your safeties, depending on the formation, either help covering a wide receiver or they cover a tight end or any other pass catcher coming out of the backfield. Your safeties will help with, or they have a free roll where they can just basically read the quarterback and go where the flow of the play is.
So this is the most common that you used to see. We'll talk about sort of the shift that's happened in the last 2 years in sort of defending against pass heavy offenses. But the way that you do this is, and Mike, I want to go to you here quickly. When you see 4-3, what is your first thought sort of as a tight end and as an offense? Like, are you just like, okay, this goes with the way that we thought it was going to go, or do you not care about formation?
I guess I really don't care that much about formation. You know, the way that plays are called, the ways to block whatever ends up kind of coming out to get you, or any way that things like shape up, you'll figure out ways to block it. It's a very easy, it's a predictable way to just come out in a 4-3. You kind of know where people are going to line up, and if there's not like a ton of pre-snap movement, it's kind of easy to know where you're going. Like either I'm blocking this DN myself as a tight end, I'm working with a tackle, to that middle linebacker if I'm going inside, or sometimes like if it's a stretch like outside deal, I'd work with that tackle and get to the strong side linebacker. So there's not a lot of like options for me. And then kind of like from a pass standpoint, I would know personally with myself, I'm not getting covered by any safeties at all. But that I'm going up against linebackers here, like if, from a pass coverage standpoint.
So that's okay. So that's 4-3. That's what you're going to see, some version of that most of the time. I will argue that 4-3 and 4-2-5 are the same formation because weak side linebackers and box safeties are the same thing. It's just about how you get paid. This is like not even a hot take for me. I'm dead serious. I think that 4-3 and 4-2-5 are the same thing.
We can discuss that. I have some arguments. Yeah.
Well, I've never played a down of football, so I'm clearly right. That's how the internet works. So this is an alignment. We're going to go through this quickly. This is what's known as an under alignment. This is not a 5-man defensive line. It's just about where people line up. So this is what's known as a 4-3 under. Why is it called under, Josh?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, that backfired.
Yeah, I thought that was going to go differently. But what it means is basically the weak side linebacker is up. And what's this, Josh?
It's over.
Is that
right?
Because the strong side linebacker is on the line?
Yeah.
See, great. Still 4-3.
Also because the website says it's called over.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Wow, quick learners.
Yeah.
All right. So
that's the Michigan and Baylor differences.
Whoa.
So this is 3-4. So this is what you will see actually from New England. New England runs a 3-4 as well as Alabama. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, if the best program in college football and the best program in the NFL run 3-4, why doesn't everybody run 3-4? And it's because of this guy.
You need to be a badass.
Like this is like I've talked about on the podcast, at least, about how the scariest position in football is cornerback in a man-heavy scheme. But the scariest position to face as an offense is if this guy is good, because that wrecks what you're trying to do. Jordan Davis did this for Georgia's defense.
Right. That's when you like that nose tackle that you're talking about. That's when you could be using that designation, line up right over top of the center. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy tends to be like 345 pounds, and if he's good, he wrecks things. It just like your offense does not work because that guy is wrecking two people at once.
His job is to eat up space.
Right.
To close up all the holes in the that the offense might try to run through. So,
and so we'll talk about in the first running plays episode about the gaps. Basically, this guy handles two gaps at once, and it's the two gaps in the middle. And if he destroys your center, which happens, then you have a quarterback who has a 350-pound person in his lap very quickly. And there are not many quarterbacks who are going to be super comfortable with that.
Right.
Yeah. That's why it's helpful to have a quarterback who can move a little bit. We'll talk about that again. Again, I don't know why so many pot shots at Kirk Cousins today, but, whatever.
Because
as a current West Michigan resident, I can't allow that slander to continue. He has a house out here, back where he lives and stuff. So yeah, I've never met the guy, but
but friend of the podcast, Nate, I think is
high school with him.
Yeah.
Played football with him in high school. That I played with at Michigan. So yep.
So this is what's known as a 5-2. In the modern era, it's very rare that you see someone call a 5-2 a 5-2. They'll usually call a 5-2 a 3-4. To use a football or soccer analogy, this would be the example of someone saying something is a 3-4-3 when in reality it is a 5-4-1. It's branding, but this is something you don't really see all that much anymore. But Michigan actually did run a true 5-2 a little bit this year. So it was interesting to watch, but it's about, the ability to do the same things that you want at the 3-4 level, but these people are just going to be a little bit bigger. So let's I'm going to get to 4-2-5 in a second. These are two variations of what's known as the 3-3-5. This is an example of so what they've done is they've replaced a linebacker or a defensive lineman with a corner. Now, Josh, why would you do that?
If you're playing against pass-heavy teams,
so
it's advantageous to have more defensive backs on the field.
I know where you're going with this.
Hey, Mike, did you ever play against a 3-3-5 in practice?
Yeah, the whole first season when I walked on, so yeah, a pass-heavy attack, it would make a whole lot of sense to have a lot of defensive backs, a lot of quick, fast guys, that aren't super heavy, not great run defenders in general in there. When you play in the Big Ten, and again, talking about a lot of I formation, we had a defensive coordinator who was tasked to run a 3-3-5, even though that's not the defense that he ran, and things didn't go well. And but yeah, so you're right. It would be a great defense if you're going against pass heavy teams. But the upper Midwest in the winter, in fall, not a great time to run that formation. So.
No. So these are two versions of the 3-3-5. They look different because they are very different. They're run differently. They have different rules. But again, for our purposes, if you're watching the game, if you see 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 3-3-5. They're you can call them both the same thing. This is what's known as dime. Nickel no longer has any meaning, and I'll get to that when we end with the 4-2-5, because again, none of this is real. But this is what's known as a dime. You're reducing the amount of linebackers. You're turning them into cornerbacks. Another way of calling this is a 4-1-6. You'll hear that in Ravens games because their defensive coordinator really tried to make himself innovative. He was just running a dime package. It's fine. You can call it a dime package. That's what this is. The reason it's called dime and the reason it's called nickel. The reason nickel was originally called nickel because nickel is, say it with me,
5 DBs.
5 DBs. Nickel, 5. So this became dime because the people who were in charge of naming these things weren't very clever. And so they're like, well, what's one more than nickel? Dime. It's like, no, it's actually 6.
What are you going to call it? Half baker's dozen? Like, or half a dozen? Like, what's the...
A lawyer's minute, 0.1 on the timesheet.
Sace.
Sace?
It's a sace.
Yep, but it is dime because
this is America, by the way. So we don't.
No, it's not. It's England. We're doing this for England.
We actually are doing this for England. So 6 pence. This is a dime, aka 6 pence. Nickel. Again, nickel means 5 cents in America. So 5 dime is 10 cents, but here it's a 416.
I don't. Is 6 pence 6? I don't. Never
I have
mind,
no
whatever.
idea what a pence is. I'll tell you what it is. It's a vice president, former vice president. Anyways.
Heyo.
This is a 4-6. The reason it's called 4-6 has nothing to do with its personnel, which makes it super confusing because every other defense in the world, that has 2 numbers, it means the amount of linemen, the amount of linebackers. The 46 defense has nothing to do with that. It was because it came from page 46 of Buddy Ryan's playbook. Unbelievable. So it's 4-3 with a strong safety in the box. It's just an 8-man box. The reason I brought it up is not because you'll ever see it, because you won't, but it looks like a goal line defense. Goal line defense is you just, when you're close to the end zone, you'll have a whole bunch of big people and then a whole bunch of slightly smaller people right up on the line to prevent the other people from running in. You usually have 3 defensive backs, corner, this guy who rarely ever does anything.
You referenced the box. What do you mean by that?
Thank you, Mike. So the box, we're going to use the 4-2-5 to do this, although I should probably have an offensive formation, shouldn't I?
Yeah, maybe.
Whatever.
Anyways, the box is this. So defensive end to defensive end up through your linebackers. So when teams say, oh, they were running against a light box, that sounded dirty. What it means is that there were not...
really just pound it right up on in there.
I hate you.
The goal is to penetrate through the box.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Sometimes you need a fullback to really ram her home. All right.
Smash the.
Just get all up in there.
I had to do it. You said this is supposed to be amongst friends.
So. Yeah, you do this. You do this to yourself.
I'll be the creepy one, I guess.
Spread holes to get through the box.
Whoa. That's
So
too
the box means from the offensive lineman and about, what is it, 8 yards back or 5?
What's that? Behind the line of scrimmage?
Yeah,
I think it's more than 5 because the linebackers are usually. Well, no, yeah, I think it's 5 because the linebackers are usually about 5 yards behind the.
Right, and I remember Michigan State, and we'll get to this in quarters coverage. They used to have their safeties lined up at 8, but they didn't get counted. So what it means is basically the linemen and the linebackers is usually what they mean by how many people are there in the box. So if you see 6, and remember we had a tight end and 5 offensive linemen, that's 6 on 6. You run into that. That's why sometimes you'll see a quarterback go to the line, he'll look around and he'll change the play because he's seeing something in the amount of people there are to play the run that makes it look good. Now, this is what's known as a 4-2-5. This is actually not the way that almost anybody runs a 4-2-5 because this is never a corner. This is never a corner. It's a safety. Josh, you have thoughts on this. 4-3s are 4-2-5s because this guy and the weak side linebacker are the same guy doing the same thing.
Okay, so I will say that role where they take out the linebacker and bring in a DB, it's become a hybrid role to where like they get athletes or linebackers who can basically coverage linebackers who can cover, so they don't have to, bring in another DB, which means less corners on the field. I'm pro corners, so like the more corners on the field, the better. But the linebackers are a lot faster these days and better in coverage, and so they just keep them out there for these type of situations.
I think that sorry to cut you off, but I think that goes to like a bigger point now with the game. Like It's almost like basketball, where back in the day, it's like you had people who like played a position and all you did was play a position.
Yeah.
Now, versatility and flexibility, there's a really big premium on that. So, like, if you're a guy who can play, like you have a certain body type, like say as a defender, you're 6'2", 215. Well, if you can cover well and you don't mind like hitting, there's a lot bigger role for you to play. Like same thing on the offensive side. Like if you're like a 6'3", receiver, but you can also like don't mind blocking or what, like flexibility matters. I think that they're like Isaiah Simmons, I think was his name, that came out of Clemson, like a linebacker, like a couple years ago.
Yeah,
he was like 6'4" and like super rangy, like athletic as could be. So it's like you put him on the field, and it's like it doesn't matter what the offense throws at you when you have these guys that are able to just adapt and defend whatever's there.
Yep.
That makes it, I guess, a lot easier for a defensive coordinator knowing that whoever's out there, like you can
match
put
up
him in the right spot to succeed.
So for those of our listeners, and we're going to end on this, a good example of this is if you watch college football, the guy who's playing linebacker, weak side linebacker, so the guy who's playing away from the tight end at linebacker is usually the most athletic guy on the field because he's big enough to be called a linebacker, but he's fast enough that the defensive coordinator is like, yeah, he could probably stay with the wide receiver for a little bit. It'll be fine. That guy is MGO Blog calls him a hybrid space player. Michigan State called him the star position for a really long time. Nickel, bandit. Yeah.
Too,
So there are a number of ways that people call this. Basically, that player is the key to a defense because if that player can actually help in the run game and actually cover wide receivers, a lot of what offenses want to do breaks down. But that brings us to next week. No, not next week. 2 weeks. March 21st, March 20th, March 21st, we will be back. We will be talking about inside running plays. So when you're watching football and you're saying, why do they just keep slamming that running back into the middle of the line for no yards? That's dumb. Why are they doing that? Right. We will explain to you that no, in fact, it's quite smart. But the fact that they are doing it over and over again, Los Angeles, or who was it? Cincinnati Bengals or Los Angeles? No, Los Angeles Rams were the ones who are like
Michigan Wolverines.
Whoever.
I'm not going to take any of that slander this year after the offensive line won the Joe Moore Award for the top offensive line in the country. You could have said that the last
any of the last 10 years.
Yeah, not this year. Yes, I will go to bat this year.
So
okay, my apologies.
Yes, all right, you're forgiven.
So I want to say a thank you to our guests. Coach Mike can be found on Twitter at mquietk. He didn't put his Twitter handle in the chat because should have. I could have done this from the beginning. You can find Josh on Twitter at Josh Benedict. You can find him on our Discord. Josh is going to tweet out the link to the Discord because I forgot what it was and I don't know where to find it because I'm bad at Discord. Josh is a big part of our Discord over at the Touchline Media Group. It's through Touchline Media. We are the tab that says End Zone Fracca. It's like us and 5 other dudes talking about football, except for the Super Bowl when all sorts of random people came in and started talking like they knew what stuff was. I didn't like that. That's fine. You can find Stumpy on Twitter at Mr. Mojo Rising 89. You can find me at Diamonds Esquire. I have at TLS_N_TDS in the title here because that's where I usually am because I don't like it when people at me at Diamonds Esquire because it means I have to switch Twitter accounts and that's annoying. Listen to our podcast. We release every Monday and Thursday. Sunday night and Wednesday night. Last episode, we talked a lot about Harry Potter. It was fun. Next episode, we're going to talk about the NFL Combine. It'll be weird. That's sort of the tone we go for. Again, we don't have a sponsor here. So if you want to launder your money through us or pay us money, pay us breakfast tacos, whatever, we'll take it. We don't really have any compunction about these things. But again, we couldn't and wouldn't do this without you. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, hit that subscribe button down there. And thanks so much. We couldn't, wouldn't do this without you. So we'll see you next time.